This part kind of goes against the whole title of Naruto not being dumb. I mean, Naruto's not stupid in this part, but it's like a bit of the childish side of Naruto that doesn't know stuff. But it was a really fun part. I hope you all enjoy. Let's get into the video. Roll the intro.
And today
Naruto came back home from his daily morning run and made 3 clones to cook breakfast while he got refreshed for his meeting with the Hokage. After he was fully ready, he flashed right onto the roof of the Hokage tower, walking down the rest of the way. He had been warned before not to directly flash into the Hokage's office, lest the Anbu mistake him for an enemy and kill him. He knocked on the door of the office and waited for the permission to enter. Once he heard Tsunade's voice from inside, he opened the door to find Tsunade standing beside the old man, who was seated in his chair. Looks like she's on a trial period until her official coronation, he thought as he closed the door behind them. Hiruzen and Tsunade straightened up a bit once they saw Naruto enter. He came to stand in front of them, expression bored but posture not as relaxed as to go hand in hand with his expression. He stood relaxed, but ready to act in an instant should any hostilities erupt. Tsunade felt quite bad for being one of the people to tell him that his love life was officially over before it even begun. The kid didn't deserve it in her eyes. Hiruzen felt much worse than Tsunade, for he had been the one to make the decision to marry Naruto away without telling him. There were few instances when he truly hated his position as the Hokage, for the decision he had to make almost crushed his conscience with their weight. This was one of them. Naruto kicked off their conversation upon seeing the old folks weren't going to begin anytime soon. So, what's the mission? Hiruzen raised an eyebrow before turning to Tsunade with a questioning look. You told me it's a mission. Tsunade shrugged. It can't be considered a long-term mission, can it? Hiruzen contemplated before shrugging himself. Well, you're not wrong anyways. He turned to Naruto with a most serious look on his face, making Naruto straighten on reflex. Naruto, first of all, I cannot express just how sorry I am to force you into this. I know there's no way I can ever earn back your trust and forgiveness after this. Naruto frowned in concern as he heard those words. He had never saw the old man look older than he really was. Plus, those words rang alarm bells in his mind. Gigi had obviously done something that affected him in a very bad way and heavily blamed himself. So he did the only thing he could, steel himself and listen to whatever bad news the old man had landed on him. Perhaps he could still find a way out. What have you done? The words came out with more accusatory feeling than he intended, but they got the point across. Tsunade and Hiruzen flinched at that tone, and Tsunade very slowly took out a scroll from the desk drawer and held it towards him. Naruto looked at the scroll with apprehension. Worst case scenario, they were kicking him out of the village for something he had apparently done. Then he would have to flee the village somehow and become a missing nin, who would then be on a run from Konoha, Hunter Nin, and Akatsuki. No pressure. He took it with calmness, without any show of fear, nervousness, or anxiety. He opened the scroll and swiftly read it, his brain picking out the important sentences and pointing them out quickly. His first reaction was blankness. His mind went completely blank when he discovered that the scroll was a document stating that he was getting married to Sabuko no Temari from Suna. He was getting married at 13 years of age. It was a surreal thought. Then his mind shifted to anger. Deep and adulterated anger at the fact that the old man had just given him away like that, without asking for his permission. It was completely uncalled on his part, not to mention illegal. You can't just do that to a clan head without asking for his permission. Clan business was serious business, so serious that even the Hokage only interfered when only absolutely necessary. Also, the old man had shot his chance at love with Temari like it was something he did every day. Was it not enough for him to have ruined his childhood? Then his mind caught up with his most recent thought. The old man had offered him in marriage to Sabuko no Temari, the same Temari who wielded a a huge fan, impressive wind style, badass attitude, and the absolutely fabulous body, including those creamy, never-ending long legs. The same one. After his brain finally caught up with the facts, the final reaction followed. Joy bubbled inside him like a lava in a volcano, but he used all the mental strength that he had garnered over the years to cap that from showing on his face. Still, some memories escaped from his grasp, such as his first ever makeout session causing a noticeable blush to spread over his cheeks. He was getting married to the person he genuinely had feelings for, that he had only grown for, not just any girl. Hiruzen and Sade frowned in concern at his silent reaction, but confusion replaced that when they saw a blush spread over his cheeks. What was the boy blushing? Something the matter, Naruto? Sade questioned. Made Naruto look up at them, scroll suddenly forgotten in his hands. He had the perfect look of a kid with his hand caught in a cookie jar, eyes wide, cheeks reddening with a blush, and mouth open. Tsunade had her eyes slightly narrowed as she spoke to the younger blonde. Are you alright? Naruto, for the first time in a long time, was short of a response. He couldn't think of what to say. He felt extremely awkward. He coughed into his fist. Yes, I'm fine. It's just that I never expected this to happen. However, Tsunade's instincts to those sort of reactions were long honed over the years. Thanks to having a teammate such as Jiraiya, she immediately knew that Naruto was hiding something. Something big. I'm not even gonna make that joke. He looked like he had past interactions with the daughter of the Kazekage. How does she know, you ask? Let's call it a woman's intuition. With an authoritative tone that Hiruzen would honestly say sounded like a mother suspicious of her child, Tsunade asked. No, commanded. I know you're hiding something, you ball of trouble, so spill it. Naruto sputtered indignantly. I'm not a ball of trouble. Trouble knocks my door, not the other way around. Tsunade was now starting to get irritated. Don't call me the topic, mister. What are you hiding? Don't change the topic. Naruto looked at the irritated face of Tsunade and the morbidly curious face of his surrogated grandfather and pondered on what to say. The fact that they were watching him like hawks was not helping at all. His mind raced over excuses that popped into his head, each being discarded in an instant. Dang it, what happened to the training of looking innocent after a prank? Naruto mentally sighed and looked away, mumbling something too low for the other to hear. Tsunade cupped her ear. What did you say? We've met. Instantly, Tsunade knew that the answer was both true and false. True because his defeated expression at her pondering was crystal clear, and false because his blush said something else that he was not saying. Oh no. You're not getting away like that. I know you did something more. What is it? Naruto looked very surprised that she somehow knew he was hiding something and wondered if all of the women were like this. Knowing that something was being consciously hidden from them, he absently wondered if he would ever be able to hide something from Temari when they would get married and start living together. We might have. The rest was said in an incomprehensible mumble. For all his age and years as Hokage, Hiruzen was dumbfounded to see such a sudden change in one of his shinobi. Naruto just went from a completely confident ninja to a shy, embarrassed one. He wondered if Naruto really had something big to hide, or was he just embarrassed at being married away at such a young age. Tsunade's patience had just about reached its end. She walked up to Naruto and grabbed his collar, shaking him like a rag doll. Will you man up and just say it? Or do you enjoy keeping people in suspense? Tell us or I'll punch you into the next week. We kissed, okay? The answer caught both of them off guard. Tsunade, for one, was not expecting this at all. This was something that was so entirely out of the blue that she was shell-shocked. Her grip on his collar loosened, and she stepped back, both mouth and eyes wide, unable to form a word. To hear that Naruto, the boy that she thought was as oblivious as his father used to be, had a short-term but romantic relationship with a girl, the same girl who her sensei had now given Naruto away to, was too much. She simply couldn't make sense of anything right now. The coincidence was almost like an act of fate. Hiruzen, on the other hand, was no better off. He'd never in his wildest thoughts imagined that Naruto apparently had been in a relationship with the Kazekage's daughter. He then realized that Naruto could only have met Temari when the Sand siblings came here for the Chunin exams. He had always thought that Naruto was a serious child, dedicated to becoming stronger so that he could protect what was precious to him. He would have never thought Naruto might actually put some time aside for some romance such as this. However, learning that Naruto already liked the selected bride, a great deal of weight was pulled off from his shoulders. He almost sank into his chair in relief like a melting ice cream. Finally, Naruto looked suspiciously at the other two in the room. It was clear who was the one who actually came up with this idea. But was it really that hard to believe that he had been in a temporary, soon-to-be permanent romantic relationship? But then again, it was from the point of view of a third person. Maybe the reaction was to be expected. Right now though, he needed to get out of there. Can I leave? The question managed to snap the other two into attention. Before they could reply, Naruto had already flashed back to his apartment. There was silence for a few moments, broken then by Tsunade's chuckles. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at her, slightly asking her why. Tsunade replied, "Who would have thought that Brat actually had a relationship with the girl? And are you marrying her off to the same girl?" Hiruzen nodded too, relaxed right to speak. He was just glad that Naruto already had a relationship with that girl, so this won't be too tough on him. Well, that was a surprise. Naruto was sitting on the head of his father, looking over the village in the night. This was his favorite place to come whenever he wanted to think in silence. Right now, he had a eating grin on his face. Dang right it was. I hate to say this, but it was almost like an act of faith. I guess we should just leave it at that. Neither you nor I are capable of truly knowing just how this happened. Naruto shrugged. True, however, this is surreal that I'm getting married to at such a young age, when I should be focused on getting stronger. But I'm glad that it happened with Temari. We both are. Speaking of getting stronger, you need to get back into training. I want you to master my first tail by the end of this week. You've rested enough. You've rested enough. You got it, Kurama. Although I wonder how Temari will react to this piece of news. I'm sure she's just overwhelmed as you are, Naruto. Perhaps more than you. I'm wondering how Gaara would react though. Naruto raised his eyebrow, whistling. Dang, you're right. Perhaps I should be worried about both of their reactions. Her brother though, he's a barrel of laughs. A loud snort echoed through his mind. You're right about that. When you really look at it, he really is just a boy in his sister's makeup, playing with dolls. This time, Naruto was the one who snorted. How do you know he wore Temari's makeup? Would any self-respecting male confess to having a makeup kit? Fair point. Naruto thought back to what he had read on the document, and automatically a grin curled up on his lip. The thought of marrying Temari, tasting those lips again for the rest of his life. Hiruzen was just wrapping up his paperwork in his office. Tsunade was to be announced as the Hokage tomorrow, so it had been a very busy day for him. Not to mention giving Naruto the good news. He was about to shunch into his clan compound when he heard, Yahoo! It suspiciously sounded like a person he was used to seeing. That was so bad. That sounded so bad. I'm not redoing it though. A week passed after the good news, without anything interesting happening, except Tsunade officially becoming Hokage. Naruto had put his week off to good use to train, and after that resumed taking mission. In fact, he fully took advantage of the privilege that became available to him after his promotion to Jonin. He was allowed to take missions of higher rank, and after taking a bit of advice from Kakashi, who had experience in the young Jonin department, he started out with high C rank to mid B rank. So far, he had completed 5 missions, 1 each day. 2 high C rank, 2 mid B rank, and 1 high B rank. The last one was actually supposed to be a mid B rank, guarding a wealthy wine merchant and his 2 friends in their journey from Konoha to the land of vegetables. Naruto was at first quite surprised that they made use of horse wagons. One was for the merchant and his friend, the other two for their goods. The merchant was at first skeptical that there would only be one ninja to guard them, but Tsunade had convinced them that Naruto was more than qualified for this mission. Naruto sat on top of the second wagon in their journey. At halfway point, it seemed that this mission would be completed without any problem, and to Naruto's regret, any fight. However, as the saying goes, don't provoke the universe. It turned out that when they were about to enter Nanokuni, they were ambushed by a ninja, more specifically, a missing nin. Omitsu Ishin was a high B-rank missing nin from Kirigakure. Apparently, he had been hired to take out the merchant by a rival, or at least that's what he said in his monologue when he was standing in front of the wagon. Poor guy never even saw Naruto coming, for the blonde's flash step was fast enough to catch Kakashi off guard. This guy stood no chance at all. He had just finished his monologue and moved to attack when slash. His head was cleanly cut off from his body by Naruto using a kunai coated with wind chakra. Naruto had been ready to dispose of his body when he had paused and took out his bingo book. He had smiled when he saw the missing nin entry on a page for 120,000 Ryo. Of course, his mission pay was relatively higher and had been bumped up because of Ishin, but extra cash hurt no one. The client had been incredibly relieved and pleased with him and his friends, repeatedly thanking Naruto for saving their lives. Naruto had told them about the change in mission parameters and the cost following it. Fortunately, they had offered no resistance against paying more. They wanted to repay him in any way they could. So Naruto just collected the extra money in payment. It had taken them a total of 38 hours to reach their destination. After getting their signature that the mission was completed and wishing them good luck on their endeavor, Naruto double timed it back to the village, making just one stop at a bounty station to collect Ishin's bounty. Unfortunately, he could not use Hiraishin because his sensing capabilities were not good enough to cover countries just yet. On the bright side, he put his recent mastery of Kurama's first tail to good use. After they had returned with Tsunade, Naruto used his week off to master Kurama's first tail. The blonde had, after a substantial amount of hard work, mastered the use of his body in the one-tailed mode. His already impressive strength, speed, and reflexes were heightened greatly. It had taken him a mere 5 hours of journey to reach Konoha. After he had reported his success back to Tsunade and collected his money, he had went back to his house, his parents' house. That was another new development for him. After the day when he was told he was called back into Tsunade's office, where she had advised him to move into his parents' house as soon as possible. After all, his apartment was hardly a place for him to live after his marriage, and knowing how Naruto tended to finish things rather quickly to avoid any backlog, she told him to move into the house the day after. At first, Naruto was a little puzzled because he really couldn't understand the reason he had to move his things so quickly. But Tsunade explained to him that he had to have the house ready and furnished by the time Tamari arrived. And be ready, she meant it was to be ready for Naruto and Tamari to live in, not just him. Being the naive guy Naruto was, he didn't understand at what she was hinting. Naruto was a very simplistic guy, who really only had what he needed and nothing more. Of course, then he was introduced to shopping, his nightmare for the next few days. Day of moving. Turns out, news like the kind of these had a way of spreading around the village very fast. Naruto had reluctantly agreed to Tsunade's suggestion of moving into his parents' house the very next day. Just as he was leaving the office after their discussion, Tsunade casually told him that they needed to do some work after he was done moving. The glint in her eyes when she said that actually managed to scare him. He had the whole next week off, including 2 days extra of the week after, because of him doing back-to-back B-rank missions the whole week and not taking the required leave, which meant he had the whole week to get the house ready for Tamari's arrival. The next day at 10 in the morning, he had started packing after he had lazed around a little. With the help of his shadow clones, he finished packing everything within an hour. All his ninja-related supplies like shuriken, kunai, ninjutsu scrolls, ninja wire went into one large sealing scroll, while his household supplies went into another large sealing scroll. When he had packed up, he looked around the apartment, feeling a small sense of sadness within him. A part of him didn't want to leave the small residence. This was actually the first thing that had belonged to him, gifted it to him by the old man. To leave it like this, even if it meant going to live in his parents' house, felt sad. He would be sure to acquire a fair price for it when he sold it later. He slung the scrolls and walked out of the apartment, closing the door. He took out a folded piece of paper from his pocket and pressed it on the ground, right in front of the door so that the seals faced the ground. Pushing a little bit of chalk into it, a glow lit up the entire corridor, lighting all the seals present on the walls. Seals that were carved by him as a security measure for those who came after him. The piece of paper had the key to the sealing array in the corridor to disable all the seals at once safely. Once the lights had receded, indicating that all the seals were now gone, he crumpled up the paper and burnt it with a blazing palm. He looked around the place one last time before flashing away. He arrived in the living room instantly. He put down the scrolls when one thing suddenly hit him. He had absolutely no idea what to do next. He was unsure if he should unpack or not, because the house already was furnished and maintained for almost 15 years. He could unpack his shinobi supplies, but what of the household supplies? He went to the only person who was capable of helping him out. But first, a little insurance. Tsunade looked at Naruto with mild amusement as he narrated his problem. She honestly found it a little cute and adorable that Naruto, who seemed to have a solution for every problem, would be unsure in the face of matters of preparing the house for his bride. Then again, a man definitely can't do a woman's job. So will you help me? Naruto opposed his question, standing in front of Tsunade. He knew that Tsunade was the only woman who could help him. She was the only one he trusted as well, aside from Shizune. Tsunade smirked as she leaned back in her chair, hands folded at her stomach. I could, but the Hokage service comes with a price, you know. Naruto internally groaned but was half expecting this. After all, Tsunade would be a fool to not take advantage of him asking for her help. He sighed and took out her sword scroll from his pouch and laid it on her table, unsealing it. Tsunade's eyes widened as her eyes laid themselves on 3 very expensive exotic bottles of sake. Her eyes shot to him in a question, to which he shrugged. Don't ask me, I found them in my basement. Interestingly, he learned that his mother was quite a fan of exotic sake. He had a whole stash of his mother's sake in the basement. These 3 were only a little part of the whole that was very delicately preserved. His mother had dang fine sealing skills if she was able to preserve the whole stash like she did. The seals on the stash were personally made by her for storage purposes. Tsunade picked up a bottle and turned it around, whistling at the label. Well, your mother had good taste, she commented, then paused. She narrowed her eyes at him. How do you know that these haven't gone bad? Naruto replied easily. My mother created seals specially for preserving them for a long time. Tsunade knew just how good Kushina was with Funjitsu. If she was the one who created seals to preserve these precious babies, then she had no doubt these hadn't gone bad. She then had a devious thought. Perhaps she could haggle for a bit more. Still, just 3 bottles for the service you're asking me for? Naruto narrowed his eyes. You very well know just how rare these are. In fact, I could have just said that I would owe you a favor, but that was too risky. I'm asking help for a bit of house decoration, mind you. Tsunade immediately raised her hands in surrender position. Just kidding, Naruto. I was just kidding. However, inside she was breathing a sigh of relief. Man, those eyes were unnerving. First things first, we need to get you access to your clan accounts, she said, standing up. We're going to the bank. What followed after was perhaps the most boring day in Naruto's short life. Tsunade had taken him to the bank right after dumping the day's work on Shizune, and they had spent almost 4 hours going over statements, accounts, etc. At the end of their work, both of them had been quite mentally exhausted, but had smiles on their faces. Turns out, if you're an important person and being accompanied by the Hokage, your work gets over rather quickly. Naruto had finally been granted full access to his clan's accounts, and what accounts they were. The Namikaze account was by no means small, having a total of 300 million ryo. Naruto had first been baffled, for he had no idea just how his father had managed to acquire so much money. Namikaze had not been a clan before his father became the Hokage. The Uzumaki account, on the other hand, had simply left him with his mouth hanging open. The simply ridiculous amount of money had almost sent him into shock. The amount won't be mentioned, but it was enough that he could live another life without working that too lavishly. Tsunade and Naruto were walking back to the Hokage's tower, the former with an exhausted smile on her face and the latter still gazing at the shiny new account cards in his hands with an awe and wonder. Tsunade looked at her fellow blonde and smirked. "You still having trouble believing?" Naruto nodded as he pocketed the cards. "The Uzumaki clan, I believe, but I had and still don't have any idea just how my father was able to acquire so much money alone." Minato was an extremely clever and resourceful person, Naruto. Just leave it at that. The two walked into silence for a while, which was then broken by Naruto. He asked curiously, "So, I thought that we were going to do something about redecorating my house. Why do we go to the bank?" To his surprise, Tsunade laughed heartily. "Oh, Naruto, I sometimes forget that you're still a child and can't see the bigger picture sometimes." That comment earned a scowl from him. Tsunade completely ignored the scowl and smirked. "The real fun begins tomorrow. We'll start at 9 in the morning." The feeling of doom Naruto had been feeling earlier returned with vengeance. That's where I'm gonna end it, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. Get this to 500 likes for the next part, and I'll see you all in the next part. Roll the outro.
Wanted a bitch who was on the move, but you on a goddamn late. Got that one in my bed and she just wanna sleep. Fucking up all of the sheets. She only wake up to eat. Do this shit every week. Like, why you do that? Crying, you wanna be great, but sleeping until the next day. Why you do that? Got that much in the bank. We go out, she order the steak. Why you do that?